These stunning goddesses of the silver screen could have married any handsome leading man in Hollywood, but they deliberately chose ugly husbands instead, and the brilliant strategic reasons behind number 8's shocking choice saved her from a fate worse than eternal control. We are about to uncover the shocking motives that drove Marilyn Monroe to marry an intellectual, why Elizabeth Taylor chose a maverick producer, and the strategic reasons behind number 8's brilliant escape. Our shocking journey begins with a 17-year-old ingenue and the man who became her necessary shield. The mentorship marriage. Why? The look chose power over Polish. In the autumn of 1944, a 17-year-old model and struggling actress named Betty Joan Persky walked onto the set of To Have and Have Not. She was all raw elegance, poised to become the screen sensation Lauren Bacall. Opposite her stood Humphrey Bogart, a man 25 years her senior, whose on-screen image was one of rumpled cynicism and world-weary charm. He was short, aging, and physically far from the glossy ideal of a leading man like Tyrone Power or Robert Taylor. Bogart carried the baggage of a volatile marriage and a reputation as a difficult but undeniable star. But Bacall was not looking for a prince. She was looking for a king, a man whose professional might transcended mere physical perfection. In a town obsessed with youth, Bogart offered her an aura of timeless, battle-tested strength. The Hollywood system of the 1940s was predatory, especially for young, unattached actresses. Bacall arrived with extraordinary promise, but also immense vulnerability under the powerful contracts of the time. What audiences didn't know was that Bogart was not just a co-star. He became an immediate, vital mentor and protector. Bacall, known simply as the Look, was surrounded by powerful men who saw her as property, a commodity to be used and discarded. Bogart, a star of immutable status and notorious independence, offered her an impenetrable shield. This protection was essential for an actress who often faced intimidation from studio heads and opportunistic colleagues. His presence alone signaled that she was off limits, transforming her vulnerability into strength. The power struggle between Bogart and Warner Brothers was already legendary, and by aligning herself with him, Bacall instantly inherited that protective aura of defiance. This immediate, visible partnership saved her from the typical years of struggle and exploitation that characterized the careers of most young studio actresses. Her choice was strategic, a brilliant maneuver around the traps laid by the studios and the press. By marrying the most established, most powerful man in Hollywood, a man who was already past his physical prime and possessed an established, non-threatening image, she neutralized the risk of being viewed as a young woman trading on her looks alone. Her coupling with Bogart immediately lent her maturity and serious artistic credibility that would have taken a decade to earn otherwise. She secured immediate, unimpeachable legitimacy. Their 1945 wedding was treated as a cultural event, immediately cementing her place not just as an actress, but as a major Hollywood figure. The press focused on the intensity of their connection, rather than her age or beauty alone. Bogart, in turn, found a muse and an intellectual equal, a woman who brought excitement back to his middle-aged life. He adored her quick wit and intelligence, which he valued far more than the ethereal beauty that captivated the world. Their shared love of reading, sophisticated humor, and shared political views created a bond deeper than any superficial appearance. Their marriage, often simplified to a grand romance, was fundamentally a professional and personal alliance. He taught her how to navigate the studio politics of Warner Brothers, cautioning her against reckless professional moves. He gave him renewed relevance, making him the romantic lead for a new generation. He championed her talent against studio resistance, ensuring she landed roles that suited her mature on-screen persona, such as those in The Big Sleep and Key Largo. Their partnership became a powerful, unified brand, Bogey and Bacall, that was far stronger than any individual star persona. This synergy meant that any attack on Bacall, whether professional or personal, was interpreted as an attack on Bogart himself, giving her enormous leverage. The security she craved, the respect she needed, was something no handsome, competing leading man could ever provide. Her decision was not based on physical attraction, but on power dynamics and a profound need for artistic and personal safety. She chose the authority and the safety that came with being Mrs. Humphrey Bogart, transforming herself from an ingenue into an icon, sheltered by a man whose charisma far outweighed his conventional appearance. Respectability's price, the golden bombshell and the producer's dark secret. Bacall chose power to secure her image. But for the ultimate platinum blonde, Jean Harlow, the need was far more immediate: respectability. By the early 1930s, Harlow's dazzling, rebellious persona had made her the most famous blonde in the world. But her screen image, often portraying women of loose morals, concerned her conservative studio, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The studio worried that her notorious private life, which included rumors of wild parties and unsuitable relationships, would alienate mainstream middle American audiences, costing them millions in box office revenue and damaging their overall brand. MGM needed their biggest star to project moral purity, even if it was fabricated. The implementation of the Hays Code in 1934 meant that Harlow's early pre-code image was becoming a major liability that needed immediate remediation. The studio fixers believed that to ascend to the status of a major bankable star, Harlow needed a stable, sophisticated marriage. Their chosen candidate was Paul Byrne, an MGM executive, producer, and writer nearly 23 years her senior. Byrne was not a man of great physical appeal. He was slight, intellectual, and known more for his professional influence than his looks. For Harlow, the marriage in 1932 was meant to be a contract of convenience, a way to appease the studio bosses and clean up her public image. She believed a marriage to a man of Byrne's professional standing would silence the whispers about her past and secure her future with MGM. The 31-year age gap and the disparity in appearance were meant to signal a serious, intellectual union rather than a frivolous pairing. Byrne, with his European sophistication and position as a confidant to studio chief Irving Thalberg, seemed the perfect stabilizing force, capable of elevating Harlow's perceived social status immediately. What audiences never learned was that behind the veneer of a respectable Hollywood union lurked a dark and complex secret that would end in tragedy just 2 months after the wedding. Byrne had deep-seated psychological issues and was reportedly unable to consummate the marriage. His personal struggles were completely unknown to Harlow and the public. On September 5, 1932, he was found passed away in the couple's home from a self-inflicted wound. The discovery of his passing by Harlow's mother and stepfather launched one of the most intense and immediate studio cover-ups in Hollywood history. The note Byrne left behind further complicated the situation, but its contents were quickly suppressed by studio personnel who understood the existential threat the scandal posed to their star. The resulting scandal was immense. MGM, fearing the destruction of their biggest female star, sprang into action, manipulating the narrative to protect Harlow's image. They fabricated stories, scrubbed evidence from the scene, and controlled every public statement to make the situation appear as a tragic self-elimination, spurred by professional stress, not marital dysfunction. Publicists successfully managed to keep the damaging specifics of Byrne's personal issues out of the newspapers, fearing the moral outrage would permanently damage Harlow's career. The studio managed to divert police attention away from Harlow, who was quickly secreted away to a studio-owned property to avoid questioning. Harlow, who married for legitimacy, found herself instantly engulfed in a far worse scandal than any she had been trying to avoid. Her choice of an ugly husband was not for love, but for a desperately needed coat of armor, an armor that ultimately failed to protect her from the cruelest of outcomes. Her professional status survived only due to the sheer, ruthless power of the studio system, but the personal cost was immeasurable. The quiet escape, choosing a failed aviator for normalcy and peace. The strategic choice was often fueled by the search for sanctuary. Bette Davis, known for her fiercely independent spirit and refusal to conform, found the relentless pressure of the studio system almost too much to bear. She didn't need power, she needed peace. She was a powerhouse actress, but her personal life was dominated by conflict, including endless battles with Jack Warner and her often toxic relationship with her mother, Ruthie. Davis famously fought the studio tooth and nail for better scripts and control, and this external battle left her exhausted and craving genuine quiet in her private hours. By the 1940s, Davis was one of Hollywood's most acclaimed, yet most emotionally battered, performers, suffering from burnout and severe anxiety. After the failure of her first marriage, Davis needed an anchor, a quiet port away from the storm of fame. In 1945, she found that anchor in Arthur Farnsworth. Farnsworth was far from the dashing male leads who clamored for her attention. He was a former commercial aviator, often described as homely and undistinguished. Crucially, he was a man completely outside the machinations of the Hollywood machinery, possessing neither money nor professional glamour. He provided no temptation for the studio to control her life through him. His anonymity was, in fact, his greatest asset to Davis. He was the opposite of the volatile, emotionally demanding men she was used to, offering a serene indifference to the film world and its endless scrutiny. The reason? Davis chose him for his utter normalcy and the emotional sanctuary he represented. Farnsworth offered her something tangible and grounded, a retreat from the manufactured reality of the film world and the crushing demands of her mother, Ruthie. He gave her peace. The marriage provided a brief interlude of relative calm for Davis, a respite from the perpetual scrutiny. They were able to lead a relatively quiet life on the East Coast, far from the constant gaze of the California paparazzi. For a brief, precious period, she felt like Bette Davis, the private woman, not Bette Davis, the Warner Brothers property. Their time together allowed Davis to rediscover simple pleasures away from the Klieg lights and the constant political maneuvering of the studio lot, providing a crucial mental break. However, the emotional toll of being married to one of the world's most demanding stars proved too much. Just 3 years later, in August 1943, Farnsworth passed away suddenly. The specific cause was publicly attributed to a severe fall, though biographers later suggested the stresses of the marriage, compounded by his own professional disappointments, played a part in his untimely passing. Davis was left to grapple not only with her loss, but with the guilt that her consuming career might have contributed to his demise. His sudden passing was a cruel irony, robbing her of the very peace and normalcy she had so carefully constructed. Davis's choice, born of a need for simplicity and a desire to escape her origins, ended in renewed heartbreak, proving that even a strategic choice for peace could not guarantee happiness in the chaotic realm of the Golden Age. The one-eyed director, how rebellion found its match and destroyed a career. The 1940s saw the rise of the femme fatale, and none was more iconic than Veronica Lake, whose signature peekaboo hairstyle and sultry appeal made her a massive star at Paramount. Yet, Lake was notoriously difficult, rebellious, and deeply resented the studio's attempt to control every aspect of her life, including her choice of roles and even her fashion. She was a woman who actively sought disruption. Her rebellious nature often led her into direct conflicts with producers, leading to professional instability even at her peak. Lake openly mocked the studio's attempts to mold her into a predictable product, causing chaos on set and creating numerous enemies in the executive suites. After a disappointing first marriage, Lake needed a partner who would not only tolerate her defiance, but actively enable it. She found that partner in André de Toth, an intimidating Hungarian director known for his blunt manner and, famously, for only having one eye. He was visually striking but not conventionally handsome, and certainly not the type of charming leading man the studio would have preferred for their star. De Toth was an intellectual and artistic force who matched her intensity. He was an auteur who operated on the fringes of the major system, offering Lake the creative autonomy she desperately craved, a realm where she could define her own cinematic identity. The reason? Lake chose de Toth because he represented unfiltered creative control and fierce independence. He was a maverick who existed outside the Hollywood consensus, and marrying him was her own act of defiance against the system. The marriage, however, became Lake's undoing. De Toth directed her in several successful films, but his own career stalled, and the relationship turned volatile. Their shared defiance made them cinematic outlaws, which initially appealed to Lake's rebellious spirit but later cost them professional opportunities. The couple's open disdain for the studio system eventually led to Lake being labeled unmanageable by powerful producers like Arthur Rank, effectively blacklisting them both from major projects. As Lake's career began to falter, partially due to excessive alcohol consumption and her own professional instability, the studio took a hard line, refusing to protect her as she once had been protected. By 1952, the marriage was over, and Lake's career was in ruins. Her strategic choice for a partner who represented rebellion ultimately backfired, isolating her from the very industry that had made her famous. She eventually descended into poverty, her glamour completely stripped away by her reckless pursuit of autonomy. She chose a difficult partner for a difficult life, and the combination proved professionally fatal. The story of Veronica Lake serves as a stark reminder of the personal cost of resisting the studio's iron fist. The intellectual shield, when the bombshell needed a brainy alibi. Few stars were more intensely scrutinized and misunderstood than Marilyn Monroe. The world saw the platinum bombshell, the dizzying symbol of pure sensuality. What Marilyn saw was a woman desperately seeking legitimacy and respect. She resented the constant infantilization she faced from the press and studio executives who dismissed her intelligence, viewing her as nothing more than a profitable piece of studio property. Following her turbulent marriage to baseball hero Joe DiMaggio, Monroe craved a stability that was intellectual, something that would prove to the world and to herself that she was more than just a beautiful piece of cinematic property. This led her to Arthur Miller, the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, and a towering figure in American letters. The pairing, which began seriously in 1955, astonished the public and the press alike. Headlines screamed about the unlikely match between the beauty and the brain, highlighting the vast cultural chasm between them and fueling endless speculation. Physically, the contrast could not have been more pronounced. Miller was tall, austere, and certainly not handsome. He was considered plain, often disheveled, and possessed a serious, often melancholy, intellectual intensity. The reason? Monroe chose Miller precisely for his lack of glamour and his formidable intellect. He represented the intellectual seriousness that Hollywood denied her, offering her a bridge to a world of substance and meaning. This marriage in 1956 was her brilliant attempt to shed the dumb blonde persona that had become her cage. She wanted to be taken seriously as an actress and as a person. Miller was her shield, her attempt to move from being an object of desire to a subject of substance. For a time, the coupling worked. Miller provided her with intellectual grounding, revising scripts and coaching her to be a more serious performer. She studied his scripts and immersed herself in his literary world, yearning for the credibility he possessed. He became her protector against the crass commercialism of Hollywood. He even wrote the role of Rosalind for her in The Misfits, a part designed to showcase her dramatic depth, sacrificing his own writing time to focus on her needs. Yet, the marriage soon crumbled under the weight of Monroe's deep insecurities and emotional fragility. Miller later confessed that her fame consumed him, and he struggled to reconcile the private, vulnerable woman with the global phenomenon. The demands of her psychological needs proved too exhausting for the intellectual retreat she had planned. Miller realized too late that he had become another caretaker for her trauma, rather than the equal intellectual partner she had sought, ultimately leading to their 1961 divorce. The intellectual escape she sought ultimately failed, demonstrating that not even the greatest mind could mend the wounded child within her. The caustic charm, marrying for elegance, and a refined, sinister status. In the post-war era, many actresses still married to secure social standing, and none understood the value of a name better than the glamorous socialite Zsa Zsa Gabor. Zsa Zsa was notorious for marrying well and often, viewing her husbands less as romantic partners and more as essential accessories to her ascent up the social ladder. Her relentless pursuit of high-status marriages was a calculated effort to maintain her visibility and lifestyle, treating the institution as a stepping stone rather than a spiritual bond. In 1949, she wed her second husband, the British-born actor George Sanders. Sanders was a man of immense elegance and wit, but he possessed a cynical, world-weary look and a notoriously cold personality, often portraying villains on screen. He was certainly not a classic romantic lead. His sophistication, however, was legendary in Hollywood social circles. Sanders possessed an old-school European polish, that Zsa Zsa desperately wished to acquire, recognizing his pedigree as superior to the new Hollywood aristocracy. The reason: Zsa Zsa married Sanders for his refined, old-world status and his caustic sophistication. Sanders was highly educated, moved in the most elite social circles, and his elegant British name instantly elevated Gabor's standing from a Hungarian showgirl to a woman of consequence. The marriage was a masterclass in mutually beneficial self-promotion. Zsa Zsa was quoted as saying, "George taught me how to wear jewels and how to speak about art." She leveraged his existing social capital to successfully transition her own identity from a minor actress to a notorious, high-society personality, learning quickly how to command attention in any social setting. Sanders received renewed visibility through his association with the glittering Gabor sisters, and Zsa Zsa received the high-society legitimacy she needed to launch her career as a television personality and permanent celebrity fixture. The physical appearance of the husband was irrelevant. The social currency he provided was priceless. Though their marriage lasted only a few years, Sanders remained a lifelong fixture, even briefly marrying her sister Magda Gabor years later. Zsa Zsa's choice proved that for certain stars, the most valuable assets a husband could provide were entirely non-physical: a sophisticated surname and the right introductions. The Svengali husband: why a global icon surrendered control to a plain partner. When Audrey Hepburn emerged in the 1950s, she represented a new kind of star, delicate, ethereal, and genuinely seeking a quieter life than the one Hollywood offered. After winning the Academy Award for Roman Holiday, Hepburn became an instant global phenomenon. But the spotlight terrified her. She struggled deeply with the lack of privacy and the overwhelming responsibility of being a major box office draw. She longed for stability and a traditional home life to counter the trauma of her childhood during the Second World War. This need for an anchor led her to Mel Ferrer, a stage director and actor who was 14 years her senior. Ferrer was not a man known for his beauty. He was often described as gaunt, intense, and overly serious. He was an authoritative figure who projected immense control. Hepburn's early life instability left her seeking a dominant father figure presence to structure her adult life, a need that overrode any consideration of conventional romance. Crucially, he was viewed by the industry as possessing a Svengali-like control over Hepburn, dictating her career choices and guiding her life in minute detail. The reason: Hepburn chose Ferrer precisely because he was controlling and paternalistic. She desperately craved the stability and direction he offered, seeing him as a powerful force who could protect her from the chaos of fame. She felt safe delegating the terrifying pressures of celebrity to him. His influence was so pervasive that many Hollywood insiders felt her career choices were guided solely by his ambitions for them as a couple, notably steering her toward stage work and away from purely commercial films. He became her self-appointed manager, mentor, and husband, ensuring she maintained her refined image and kept her feet on the ground. The marriage was less a grand romance and more a partnership of dependence. She willingly surrendered control in exchange for the domestic tranquility and sense of psychological security he provided. She later admitted that she found great comfort in the feeling of being taken care of and directed, a necessity given her private struggles with the fame machine. While the relationship was often turbulent and eventually ended, her choice was a profound expression of her need to find a solid, commanding figure who could create the safe, predictable home environment she had never known. The genius reason: the royal escape that saved her soul from Hollywood. This brings us to one of the most brilliant and life-altering strategic moves ever made by a Hollywood star, a choice that seemed like a fairy tale but was, in fact, a carefully orchestrated rescue mission. Grace Kelly was the icy blonde goddess of the 1950s, the ultimate symbol of cool American elegance. In 1955, she was at the peak of her power, yet she was deeply unhappy and exhausted by the rigorous demands of her 7-year contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The studio treated her as property, controlling her roles, her image, and her private life. Kelly felt trapped. Her contract with MGM was a virtual prison, 7 years of mandatory service with zero freedom, designed to control her until 1962. She saw no legal or professional way out of the constant scrutiny and demanding workload. She had already tried negotiating time off to focus on her personal life, only to be ruthlessly denied by the studio executives who considered her too valuable to release. Then she met Prince Rainier III of Monaco. Rainier was not a movie star. He was a minor European sovereign, and by Hollywood standards, he was considered plain, short, and nearly 6 years older than Kelly. Their physical pairing defied cinematic convention. Rainier's status, however, was far more permanent and powerful than any fleeting fame Hollywood could offer. The genius reason: Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier III, not for love or for a title, but for an immutable escape from the studio system. Marrying Rainier provided Kelly with an immediate, non-negotiable exit from Hollywood. The studio had no power over a European monarch. Her role as a future princess superseded any contract drawn up by the studio. Her wedding was, in essence, the ultimate breach of contract, a move into a realm of power royalty that was higher than the power of Hollywood. MGM had no choice but to terminate her contract, though they attempted to mitigate their losses by filming the wedding for a commercial movie, demonstrating their lingering control. This move saved her sanity, her reputation, and her personal freedom. She chose a crown over a camera, an absolute title over a studio contract, and in doing so, she became the only star to successfully and cleanly walk away from Hollywood at the height of her career, saving herself from a fate of perpetual exploitation. Her marriage became the most glamorous, legally sound contract termination in cinematic history, a true masterstroke of personal negotiation. It was not a romantic decision. It was a stroke of genius that allowed her to define her own destiny. If these shocking strategic marriages intrigue you, and you want to keep exploring the true, complex lives of Hollywood's classic stars, please hit that subscribe button now. Your support helps us peel back the layers of glamour and reveal the true human stories underneath. The Hurricane Man, marrying a brash, ugly maverick for chaos and independence. Following the quiet, calculated escape of Grace Kelly, we turn to the turbulent chaos of Elizabeth Taylor. Taylor, a woman of dazzling beauty and immense passion, often chose partners who represented the antithesis of the handsome, controlled leading men the studios preferred for her. After the passing of her beloved third husband, Mike Todd, she was drawn to a series of high-profile but often physically unremarkable men. However, it was her fourth husband, Mike Todd, a notoriously brash, loud, and physically rough producer, who represented her greatest strategic rebellion against Hollywood's conventions. Todd was short, heavy-set, and possessed a famously crude manner. He was far from the polished image of a screen idol. His appearance was completely secondary to his immense, self-generated force of will. He had an almost theatrical energy that consumed any room he entered, diverting the spotlight away from Taylor's physical beauty and onto his own commanding presence. The reason? Taylor chose Todd because he was a maverick who operated entirely outside the studio system. Todd, who had produced the epic Around the World in 80 Days, was a self-made man who answered to no one. Marrying him in 1957 gave Taylor a taste of wild, untamed independence that she had never experienced while under the thumb of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. He was chaos, excitement, and a source of constant laughter. Todd actively encouraged her independence, famously telling MGM that she would work for him or no one, challenging the studio system directly. Taylor's marriage to Todd was a deliberate choice for unfiltered freedom. He was her protector, not by being handsome, but by being the most powerful, bombastic, and uncontrollable man in Hollywood. He treated her as a woman, not a possession, a revolutionary concept in the mid-century film world. She thrived under his protection and the nonconformist lifestyle he offered. Their short, explosive marriage was a whirlwind of global travel and extravagance, a defiant rejection of Hollywood propriety, which Taylor found thrillingly liberating. His sudden passing in a plane crash, after only 13 months of marriage, left her devastated. But her choice to marry the physically plain, emotionally explosive producer remains a shining example of a star choosing raw, self-directed freedom over managed appearance. The love goddess and the mad genius, seeking intellectual shelter from a studio pimp. Rita Hayworth was manufactured into the definitive American love goddess by Columbia Pictures executive Harry Cohn. She began life as the Spanish-American dancer Margarita Cancino, but Cohn subjected her to a brutal physical and psychological transformation, changing her dark hair auburn and using painful electrolysis to raise her hairline. The resulting image was pure Hollywood appeal, but Hayworth felt like a possession, trapped by the manufactured persona. She needed rescue. She longed for someone to recognize her intellectual curiosity beneath the studio's facade. The erasure of her Spanish heritage was a deep personal wound that fueled her search for genuine connection and authentic identity. In 1943, she met and married Orson Welles, the monumental writer, director, and actor known for his intellectual genius. Welles was massive in both size and ego, eccentric, and certainly not the idealized image of a handsome movie star. The reason? Hayworth chose Welles as an intellectual shield and a creative partner who could protect her from the relentless exploitation of Harry Cohn. She later admitted that Welles was the first person to see the Margarita Cancino beneath the Rita Hayworth facade. He respected her mind, treating her as a person of substance rather than just a beautiful object. The marriage was a desperate move for intellectual salvation and emotional depth. She hoped his brilliance would elevate her own self-worth. Welles was one of the few men in Hollywood who dared to challenge Harry Cohn directly, making him an ideal source of protection against the tyrannical studio head. Welles attempted to guide her into more complex, challenging roles, but the volatile nature of their genius-level egos and the continued pressure of Hollywood eventually shattered their union. Welles's own career struggles and frequent infidelity ultimately undermined the emotional stability she had sought, turning her intellectual sanctuary into another source of turmoil. Despite the failure of the marriage, Hayworth's choice demonstrated a powerful longing to be seen, to be valued for her mind rather than her body, even if the man she chose was considered an eccentric, mad genius by the rest of the world. The bigamist's betrayal, a frantic attempt at stability that became a scandal. Few stars were more beautiful or suffered greater professional and personal instability than Lana Turner. Her tumultuous personal life, marked by 8 marriages, was a constant source of tabloid fodder. Yet all she ever truly craved was a sense of normalcy and a stable family life. After a quick, failed first marriage, Turner made a lightning-fast and tragically ill-fated choice in 1942 to marry Stephen Crane, a physically unremarkable second-tier actor and dubious financier. His lack of star power and financial stability was his primary flaw. He offered a quick fix, an immediate escape from the loneliness she felt. Turner, constantly working and often emotionally isolated, desperately sought any port in the storm of her fame, believing a husband would instantly provide the home life she lacked. The reason? Turner married Crane in a frantic attempt to gain immediate family stability and escape the loneliness of her constant work schedule. The marriage was a desperate gamble for normalcy. That gamble turned into an explosive scandal when, 6 months later, Turner discovered that Crane's recent divorce from his first wife had not been finalized, making their union a bigamous one. The discovery was devastating, particularly since she was pregnant with their child at the time, compounding the professional risk with personal heartbreak. The revelation horrified Hollywood. MGM, despite their best efforts, could not completely bury the story, and the scandal permanently tainted Turner's carefully cultivated image. The shame of the bigamy followed her for years in the moralistic climate of the 40s. Though she later remarried Crane legally for the sake of their daughter, the entire episode underscores the heartbreaking truth that the most beautiful woman often made the most frantic, uncalculated choices in her desperate search for a functional home. This disastrous marriage highlighted the deep psychological cost of being perpetually managed by the studio, leading to erratic, personal decision-making. The beautiful goddess was betrayed not by the lack of her husband's looks, but by the weakness of his character. If you are finding these revelations as shocking as we are, please take a moment to hit the like button and share this documentary with someone else who loves the golden age of Hollywood. Also, leave a comment on what you think about their decisions. Your engagement is vital. The Noir Betrayal, a creative partnership that crossed the ultimate line. The films of Gloria Graham specialized in dark, sultry psychological drama. As the queen of film noir, she often played women whose external beauty masked a dangerous inner turbulence. Her real life tragically mirrored her roles, culminating in one of the most genuinely shocking marriage secrets Hollywood ever produced. Graham married her second husband, director Nicholas Ray, in 1948. Ray was a brilliant creative mind, but he was rumpled, perpetually exhausted, and visually far from glamorous. The reason? Graham married Ray for a creative connection and artistic legitimacy, seeking a partner who understood her inner complexity and could guide her career toward more serious roles. Their shared professional life was a high-wire act, resulting in film classics like In a Lonely Place. Graham felt a deep, complex pull toward Ray's artistic intensity, valuing it far above the superficial charm of studio-approved suitors. Their collaboration was artistically fruitful, but their personal dynamic was volatile and often fueled by insecurity, pushing the boundaries of conventional behavior. However, the turbulent marriage came to a shocking conclusion in 1951. According to accounts that later surfaced, Ray discovered Graham in an extremely compromising situation with his 13-year-old son, Tony Ray, from a previous marriage. While Graham was never charged with a crime, the incident led to an immediate divorce. The details of the split were deemed too destructive to both their careers to ever be publicized. The revelation was so explosive that the studio system, typically ruthless in burying scandals, had to employ every tool at its disposal to prevent the full truth from reaching the public, fearing a moral panic. The power of the publicists and studio fixers was required to quell the internal speculation and the potential for legal disaster, using carefully crafted public statements about irreconcilable differences. The studio, in an act of powerful cover-up, managed to keep the true reason for the split strictly confidential for over a decade. The story became infinitely more scandalous when, in 1960, Graham married Tony Ray, her former stepson, who was by then 22 years old. This union was conducted in a secret ceremony in Tijuana, Mexico, demonstrating Graham's desperate attempts to keep the situation hidden and maintain some semblance of a private life. When the secret finally erupted during a bitter custody battle with a different ex-husband, the damage was instantaneous and irreparable, confirming Hollywood's deepest fears about her stability. This jaw-dropping revelation, when finally uncovered during a custody battle, effectively ended her career. Graham chose a creative partner who devolved into a devastatingly inappropriate relationship, a decision that proved that even the most calculated career moves could not save her from her own troubled personal choices. The theatrical partnership, choosing a peer for shared madness and legacy. Theirs was a romance that transcended the screen, a union of two theatrical titans that defined an era. Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier were Hollywood's royal couple, the most celebrated partnership of their generation. Yet, Olivier, though immensely famous, was often described as less physically perfect than his screen rivals, possessive and intensely self-critical. Their relationship was a tumultuous, all-consuming partnership driven by ambition and emotional intensity. The reason? Leigh chose Olivier not for his traditional handsomeness, but because he was her artistic peer and emotional soulmate. Their marriage, forged in 1940, was a professional pact, a quest to dominate both the stage and the screen together. They collaborated constantly, viewing their marriage as the foundation for an artistic dynasty that would dominate the West End and Hollywood. They were determined to create a theatrical legacy that rivaled even the greatest romantic figures of history, often casting themselves opposite each other in demanding classical roles. They shared an almost pathological ambition for greatness and, tragically, a descent into severe mental health struggles. They saw themselves as acting royalty, a status they were constantly striving to uphold both professionally and personally. The public saw a flawless glamour, but the stars themselves lived under the crippling pressure of their own mythology. Their professional union was so tightly interwoven that their emotional bond often suffered, being relegated to secondary status beneath their joint artistic goals. The choice was not for serenity, but for shared dramatic intensity and a legacy that would echo for centuries. The stress of maintaining this relentless professional and personal intensity exacerbated Lee's struggles with bipolar disorder and Olivier's own psychological fragility. The unrelenting demand to be the Oliviers, the perfect couple, put an impossible strain on their already delicate emotional states. When Lee's health declined, Olivier struggled to maintain both his own career and the public illusion of their perfect union, adding immense strain to his conscience. The sheer magnitude of their fame meant there was no escape or privacy for either of them to seek help or process their devastating illnesses privately, leading to public breakdowns that further fueled their shared tragedy. What the world saw as a glorious romance was, behind closed doors, a crucible of shared madness and high drama. Their love story, while visually magnificent, reveals that some stars choose their partner not to find peace, but to find a mirror for their own internal complexity. The ultimate career move, marrying a name to become Hollywood's reigning terror. We conclude our exploration of strategic marriages with perhaps the most coldly calculated choice of all, one that secured not love, but lasting power. Before she became the notorious, feared, and widely read gossip columnist, Hedda Hopper was a struggling, minor stage and screen actress. She possessed ambition but lacked the star power or the connections needed to thrive in Hollywood. Her personal ambition far outstripped her actual acting talent, necessitating a drastic strategic move to achieve the fame she craved. In 1913, she married DeWolf Hopper. DeWolf was a well-established, older stage actor, physically plain, and certainly not a major star. The reason: Hedda Hopper married him purely for his name and his connections. He was twice her age and had been married 5 times previously, yet Hedda saw him as a stepping stone, a means to an end in the cutthroat world of theater and cinema. Despite the marriage being tumultuous and short-lived, the name Hopper was the golden key she needed for her future success. His connections in the New York theatrical world were impeccable, offering her access she could never achieve alone. This acquisition of a famous theatrical surname was the foundation upon which her future empire of gossip and power would be built. Her first name was Elda, but after marrying DeWolf, she began professionally using the name Hedda Hopper. This name, with its established recognition and theatrical lineage, provided her with the instant social access she needed. When her acting career stalled, she leveraged the social introductions she had gained as Mrs. DeWolf Hopper into a career as a columnist. She launched her syndicated column in 1938, using her borrowed social standing to gain a position of ultimate authority over the stars who had once dismissed her. Her signature elaborate hats, adopted during this period, were part of the persona she crafted to command attention and project untouchable status. She used her columns not just for gossip, but as a moral cudgel, leveraging public decency against the stars who were vulnerable to her scrutiny. She became the most feared woman in Hollywood, using her column to enforce her conservative moral codes and build an empire of influence. Hedda's marriage to the physically unremarkable DeWolf was the most successful strategic move on our list, proving that a boring husband with the right name could be a far greater asset than a beautiful husband with no power. She didn't seek love, she sought a platform, and the name Hedda Hopper provided the launchpad for her reign as Hollywood's queen of condemnation. She maintained her power by knowing the secrets of the stars who had once dismissed her. The name she acquired outlived his career, transforming her from a forgotten actress into a household name. Why love was the last thing they looked for. The stories of these 14 gorgeous goddesses, from the intellectual sanctuary sought by Marilyn Monroe to the royal escape executed by Grace Kelly, reveal the extraordinary complexity of celebrity life in the Golden Age. For these women, marriage was rarely the romantic culmination audiences assumed. Instead, it was an act of calculation, driven by survival, status, freedom, or desperation. These were not simple romantic failures. They were high-stakes gambles for personal autonomy in a controlled world. The contrast between the public image, the screen goddess marrying the distinguished leading man, and the private reality, the frightened woman choosing an ugly protector or a status accessory, is profound. They bypassed the handsome rivals, who could only offer more competition, and chose men who offered far more valuable commodities. The power of the mentor, Bacall, the elegance of status, Gabor. The freedom of the maverick, Taylor, or the psychological sanctuary of the ordinary man, Davis. The personal costs were often agonizing. Jean Harlow paid with her stability, Lana Turner with her reputation, and Gloria Graham with her entire career. Yet, in their choices, we find a perverse kind of strength. These women were not victims. They were active agents, making the best possible decisions in a system designed to exploit them. Their strategic marriages were their attempt to take control of a life that was constantly being scripted by others. When we watch their films now, knowing the truth of their private struggles, their radiance on screen shines even brighter. It is not diminished but illuminated by the sheer willpower it took to maintain that glamour while navigating such complex, painful, and often ugly private lives. They may not have found the fairy tale, but they found something arguably more compelling: survival and self-determination. As we've finished peeling back the layers on these 14 strategic marriages, we hope you have gained a deeper appreciation for the complex human beings behind the famous names. Their films endure, not despite their personal struggles, but perhaps because their art was fueled by the depth of their private experience. Thank you for watching this journey through Hollywood's secret histories. We encourage you to leave a comment below telling us which of these revelations surprised you the most, and please let us know what Golden Age Hollywood topic you'd like us to cover next. Your ideas guide our future explorations. Until next time, this is Golden Age Files, celebrating the full, complicated humanity of the stars who built Hollywood's dreams.